Take your career to the next level. The University of South Florida, St. Petersburg is offering a master's degree in digital journalism and design. Do the entire program from home and complete it in as little as 1 year. For more information, email journalism@usf.edu or call 727-873-4544. The cost is reasonable. The experience is invaluable. From the worldwide leader in journalism, truth, and democracy, this is the Poynter Report Podcast, a joint production between the Poynter Institute and the Department of Journalism and Digital Communication at the University of South Florida, St. Petersburg. Now here's your host from the Poynter Institute, Tom Jones.
Hey everybody, welcome in. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Here we are, Season 5 of the Poynter Report Podcast, and we kick off the new season with this episode and a very special guest. He is Tom Llamas, anchor of the NBC Nightly News, just the fourth anchor of the NBC Nightly News in the past 40 years. He took over for the legendary Lester Holt last year. And I also want to get into this. He's also the anchor of Top Story on NBC Now. I don't know how he has the time to do all this stuff, but he works in, obviously not only has the news been hectic, but Tom has gone on the road, places like Israel, Texas, Miami, Chicago, Washington, D.C., Alaska. Pretty soon he's headed off to Italy for the upcoming Winter Olympics, which will be on NBC and on Peacock. Tom Llamas, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, Tom, so great to be with you. Thanks for having me, and congrats on 5 seasons. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, thanks so much. I have to start off a couple of things. One, sorry about your Miami Hurricanes.
That was rough. Yeah, that was rough. It was a great season, and it was a great game. And I actually had a chance to meet Fernando Mendoza last week, and he was such a great guy, him and his family. So it's you never want to lose, but to lose to a guy like that who's a real champion, it was impressive to see him play. Yeah.
I was really pulling for Miami for a couple of reasons, but mostly because I'm surrounded by Indiana University graduates here at Poynter.
Oh, really? Okay.
Times, and they've become the most insufferable college football fans in the country over the last 3 months. Yeah. So anyway, I was pulling for. And though we're recording this, we should tell listeners and viewers, we're recording this just as the big storm you guys are digging out in New York. How was it in the city?
It was the city was okay. It wasn't too bad. I think it stopped snowing around 3:00. We live out in the suburbs, and it was snowing until like maybe 8:00 at night. So there's a lot of snow there. Me and my son were digging us out for a little bit, but thankfully the plow truck guys came by at some point late last night, and so we were able to get out of the house. But it was a lot of snow. It was it was pretty amazing to watch. We were in the city on Saturday for. We took one of our kids to go see something on Broadway, and then we were leaving out on Sunday when the storm was rolling in, and it got us a little early. So the drive home was a little treacherous, but we made it. It was all good.
I'll get into more about the evening news in just a minute, but I did want to ask in terms of like weather coverage. I mean, that's something that seems like evening news, and really all news, even local news too, has really leaned into over the past, I don't know, decade, 15 years.
Yeah, I think weather's important. I think weather's important. There's people that try to. There's people that don't always agree with that, and that's fine. My general sense, whether it be local or national news, I think weather's incredibly important. I think people want to know what the weather is like, obviously, where they live, right? I think that's what sort of separates local news. And as much as you have weather on your apps and you have all these technologies and all these apps, I still think the value of a great meteorologist, somebody who knows the community, who knows the history, who knows exactly what's going to happen in this section of your city. The app is never going to give you that, right? The app's not going to give you that context, that history. And also, the app doesn't, not that it's heartless, but your meteorologist cares about that community, so they're going to be out there really concerned for you. So I think weather's important. That's number one. Number two, since network news has evolved, since it launched 50, 60 years ago, everyone has a phone now in their hands, and they're able to capture extreme weather. They're able to experience extreme weather. Sometimes it's very dangerous. Sometimes it's beautiful. Either way, I think weather now is captured in ways we've never seen it before. So I think we understand weather more. We have incredible tools, whether it be radar systems or graphics to use. I think it's an exciting part of the newscast, and it's something that whether I have family that lives in Miami, and they're always asking me about the weather in New York, and so. The people's arguments are, well, if you live in Indiana, you don't care about what the weather is in Los Angeles. probably most of the time, 95% of the time. But if there's extreme weather anywhere, you're going to care about it because number one, the pictures are incredible. Number two, that's affecting a lot of people.
Right, especially this past storm that we're talking about. I mean, there are a lot of people who may not live in those areas, but they're about to travel to those areas or about to travel. So it's really a story that affects more than just maybe the people that were in the...
I mean, we had 170 million people affected by this last storm. So, yeah, it was big news.
You occasionally hear the story about successful people, and how it's almost a cliche. Oh, they worked their way up from the top. You truly do, or from the bottom. You truly worked your way up from the bottom. You were an unpaid intern, right, at NBC?
Yeah, I was, yeah.
It's like 20-some years ago. Does it feel like it's been a blink of an eye, or do you feel like, no, I remember every moment of the journey getting here?
I do remember every moment of the journey. I mean, I've been at this since I was 15. A lot of the people, but not everyone, a lot of the people that I first met in this business, thankfully, some of them I still work with and I still see. I was just down in Miami for that Miami Hurricane game, and I was doing some stuff at the local station at WTVJ because they had a great story. There are two local main anchors, Jackie Nesperl and Jawan Strader. Jawan went to Indiana, and Jackie went to Miami, and they're in Miami. So it was a great story. So we interviewed them for Nightly. But when I was down there, a lot of the photographers, a lot of the editors, the assignment desk people, that when I started as a reporter there, and I was a very green reporter, these were people that helped me out a lot, are still there. So it's great to kind of go back and connect with them. They bust my chops, and we laugh a lot because we've had so many experiences and stories. I was there for 4 years, and I covered a lot of hurricanes with them. But there are still people there at the because it's a duopoly. There are people at the Telemundo station, the duopoly, that were there when I was an intern when I was 15 years old, which is incredible. Reporters, some people on the assignment desk. And so it's always funny to kind of catch up with them as well because they remember me when I literally couldn't drive to the news station. My mom, my first trip, she dropped me off, and then I had a learner's permit, so I would drive. It was in Hialeah. I would drive, and I remember my hands would be so sweaty because I was learning how to drive. We had to get on the Palmetto in South Florida, and there's a lot of traffic, but those were great memories. But no, I remember everything. I remember when I walked into this building, 30 Rock, as an unpaid intern, as you mentioned, in the summer of 2000. And I can remember walking in and just being in sort of this palace of broadcasting and just being in awe of all the people that worked here and all the producers and all the news anchors and reporters. And just to know that this was sort of the top of that network news food chain, and to have that experience to kind of see them was pretty incredible.
Was this the goal all along, or you just like, no, I just want to keep doing good work and see where it takes me?
I took a couple different turns in my career. When I interned here, I got to intern during the 2000 conventions, and I worked with a guy named Phil Alonji, who was one of the top producers. I think he was the senior executive producer for Specials. And they were producing the conventions that year in 2000. So it was one convention was in Los Angeles for the Democrats. For the Republicans, it was in Philadelphia. And I got to go and kind of see those conventions and see how they were. And I was in the control room with guys like Jeff Zucker when he was at his prime in network news producing. And to see Jeff in action as, a 20-year-old college student, to see just like this guy take over a control room and put that headset on and just, be in charge, it was incredibly impressive. So when I got out of college, even though I'd taken a lot of on-air courses at Loyola, where I went in New Orleans, I studied communications, and they had a great broadcasting program and, a newsroom and a newscast and the whole deal. I had taken a lot of on-air stuff, but coming out of college, I wanted to be a producer. I actually wanted to be an executive producer. And so I started out as a PA, AP. I worked on graphics, on booking. And then in around 2004, the summer of 2003, they had this idea to put sort of young-looking reporters on the campaign trail and call them campaign embeds. And this is the 2004 campaign because there were several Democrats running. I think there was at one point 17. And I got selected for that, and I got placed with Al Sharpton. And I thought my campaign embed was going to be very short-lived, but it turned out to be probably one of the best things in my career because Al Sharpton was always making news. He was incredible in front of the camera. He was very funny, very unorthodox campaign. He was definitely a fringe candidate, but he was also sort of a candidate who was causing trouble for the Democrats, even though he was running on the Democratic ticket. And I got on TV a lot, and I was reporting all the time, and I guess I got on the radar of some NBC News executives, and they kept me in the embed program after Sharpton kind of faded out, and then they offered me a job as a local reporter in Miami, and it was a dream job, and covering local news in your hometown is so great.
I want to talk a little bit about evening news, nightly news in particular, but evening news in general. Obviously, things have changed a lot since the days of before cable, back when Cronkite and Rather and people like that were doing. Peter Jennings, he had like 30 million people watching it. These days, it's more in the $6 or $7 million range, or 7 million viewer range. But with TV and streaming, the cable, like that's still a significant number of people who watch the evening news. What's the role of evening news these days as you see it?
I'll just tell you what the viewers tell us. I mean, they turn to us because they kind of want to know the truth. They want to make sense of their day. They've been hit with all kinds of things, from text messages from friends, from Facebook messages from other relatives that may or may not be true, to everything they've read online. And then there's other people that it's a tradition for them. They come home, they get the kids ready for bed, or they're getting ready for dinner, and they watch the nightly news. I think in a lot of ways, news consumption is like coffee, right? There's all types of coffee out there, and people like their coffee a certain way. And once they have their coffee, it's kind of like their thing. Maybe you make drip in the morning. Maybe you're an espresso guy and you like getting like really niche in how you make your coffee. But in America, because of capitalism, you have a lot of choices. And I think the same is true with news. And so there's people that like their news a certain way, and they love the evening news, and they love that format. So when I took over after Lester, I wasn't going to blow up that format because I think it's a great format. I think the news package is one of the best ways to deliver news. And I think the difference between, and I think nowadays to survive, you do have to be everywhere. So NBC News as an organization, our webpage has grown so much in the last 5-10 years, which has kept us very competitive. We stayed with streaming and established that beachhead when others retreated. And I think that has kept us very competitive. Our numbers grow every month on streaming. And then, of course, we have, franchises like Nightly News and Today and Dateline. And I believe for the future of our business, you've got to be everywhere. And we are right now. And so, look, wherever people are trying to get news, we're there. And my job is to provide a show at night on streaming and to provide a show on network. And I still think, like you said, there's still, when you add up all the numbers, when it's said and done, you're going, 20, 30 million, depending on the night. It's a lot of people.
Right. I mean, how much do you see not only competing against, say, the ABCs and the CBSs, but you're competing against Fox News and MS Now and CNN? Do you still feel like, there's a large segment of people out there who want news to basically confirm what they think about politics or what they think about today's events. How much is that in your thinking when you're reporting on the news, and do you see those guys as competition, or are those people like viewers you're not going to bring back at that?
I don't think you think about every single network and every single channel, right? Because you drive yourself crazy, and you got to kind of stick to your race. I think if you look at the history of journalism, you have to have a competitive edge, right? I mean, back before there was television, radio days, you had an AM edition, you had a PM edition, right? You had the evening news that would come out. It was a newspaper that would come out in the afternoon. It was like, how did the story advance? What is the scoop? Who has the latest? Whether it be tabloid wars or be, regular old school newspaper wars, you have to be competitive. You have to make sure your reporters are getting the latest information. You have the best analysis. And nowadays you have the best video, right? You have the latest video. You have the most compelling elements to tell that story. I think any type of journalism, for it to survive and thrive, you have to have that competitive edge to win and to have something your competitors don't. Because if you're not, they're going to change the channel. What are you offering your viewers that the others aren't? So I think when it comes to nightly news, I kind of break down the newscast in 3 ways. We want to inform, we want to empower, and we want to inspire at the end. That's kind of the way, if you think about the 3 blocks. We have 4, but the 3 main blocks, the A, B, and the last block, the C block. That's the way we kind of program. We want to make sure we have the best news, the breaking news in that A block, and the B block. I'm very big into investigations. I believe in empowering the viewer. We've launched this series, The Cost of Denial, because I think we have to give something to our viewer. I believe, and I've been saying this for a long time, you can check the records in the archives. I believe my job is to work for the viewer, NBC signs the paychecks, but I work for the viewer. So what are we giving to the viewer? Something I learned in local news was that local investigations, which are, the premier investigative journalists in this country, work at local newspapers, they work at local stations. They just do, and they've still stuck with it because they know they have to get results for their viewers. And so I kind of want to bring that back to the evening news. And we did with The Cost of Denial and other stories that we're launching. And I think with things like that, it separates you, and the way you tell stories and where you're putting your people and making sure that you're staying aggressive when it comes to the A block stories and then giving something the others aren't in that B block.
You travel a lot, you go on the road, a lot of anchors do that. And I get questions a lot of time from viewers or people who read my newsletter, well, they'll say, why does a guy like Tom Llamas or Tony DeCope or whoever, why do they go to these cities? They can just sit in New York or in DC or whatever and send it to a reporter who's in the middle of a storm or in the middle of a protest somewhere. What's the point of an anchor going on the road somewhere for a story?
Yeah, I think what separates television news and now streaming news from the rest is it's not the transmission of information, it's the transmission of the experience. And that's something that one of the founders of NBC News said back in the day. And that was true then, and it's true now. You can go to the LA wildfires and try to do a podcast. And I'm not saying anything bad about podcasts, but you're just not going to get the same experience. You're not going to be able to deliver the type of journalism that you can if you have a camera there, a seasoned reporter, a seasoned anchor who has covered these wildfires, who knows that area, who can bring that story safely back to the viewers. You just can't. And so I think as an anchor, I can't speak for other people. The reason why I go is to hear from the people affected, to see it with my own eyes, to make that newscast sharper. When it comes to Nightly, we only have, after the all said and done with the commercials, about 25 minutes. So I want to make sure we're packing the best, most impactful information in those 25 minutes. And yeah, I'm going to go over there because I want to tell the story myself too. I want to see it. I'm a reporter. In my core, I'm a reporter. One of my mentors is a guy named Jerry Nachman, and he ran like the New York Post. He ran WCBS, WNBC, WCBS. Like, he was kind of all over, a New York news legend, if you will. And then he had his own show for a while on MSNBC. That's where I met him. And he said the highest calling in this business is to be a reporter. And I believe that. It's to go out there and shine that light and get that story and bring it back. Richard Engel, described it as a hunter and gatherer. And he'll say, sometimes I bring back gazelles and sometimes I bring back berries, but he's going to bring something back. And so I think that's the highest calling in this business. And when I can show the viewers that at my core, I'm a reporter, I think it's important too. And I think at the end of the day, I believe in immersion journalism, Tom. I think Anchorman is a hysterical movie. It's probably one of the funniest movies made in the last 20 years. That being said, a lot of people, along with the criticisms of fake news, think people in TV news don't work hard. And as you know, because you've covered this, that's just not the case. People, they work their tails off and they care about their work. And anytime we can show the viewer that we're out there working for them, I'm going to do that.
I want to find out what your day is like. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. We're going to take a quick break. Before we do, please give us an excellent rating. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're traveling or working out or going on a walk, going on a run, you can listen to us on Apple, Google, or Spotify. Don't forget that excellent rating. More with Tom Llamas in just a moment.
Like and subscribe.
Hey, everybody. If you enjoy this podcast, can I ask you for a quick favor? Please subscribe to the Poynter Report newsletter, where I bring you the latest media news and analysis each and every weekday. If you already subscribe, thank you. But don't stop there. Check out the other great newsletters we offer at poynter.org/newsletters. Every Wednesday, my colleague Kristen Hare spotlights what's happening in local newsrooms across the country in Local Edition. On Fridays, my editor Ren LaForme rounds up the smartest stories from Poynter in his newsletter, Open Tabs. If you care about misinformation, fact-checking, and getting to the truth, you'll love Factually. And if you're looking to sharpen your writing, leadership, or ethics skills, Poynter Pro Weekly has you covered. Go to poynter.org/newsletters and sign up today. So, Tom, I mentioned you're also the anchor of Top Story, which starts at 7 p.m., right after nightly news. I imagine you didn't have to do Top Story if you didn't want to. I mean, you're the anchor and managing editor of the nightly news. Why still do Top Story? What is it about that appeals to you?
I've been doing it now, I think a little, maybe around 4 years, maybe more than that. I don't know. But like I said, I thought it was important that NBC News established that beachhead in streaming with NBC News now. I've seen sort of the numbers grow there. I know that streaming is the future. Everyone streams something nowadays. I think you have to be where the viewer is, and there's a lot of viewers on network television, and there's a lot of viewers in streaming, and so we wanted to be there. Top Story is also a longer format. It's almost 3 nightlies put together, right? It's an hour of news. We cover everything. We cover the world. We cover Latin America. We can expand on segments. We can have some fun. We can do entertainment. There's just a lot more room as a journalist and an anchor to do stuff. Now, is it a lot more work? Yeah, I tell people now I'm 100% busier than I was before. It's a lot, and I didn't know it was going to be this much, but it's okay. That's life, right? But I felt like we had built something really great, and I really am fond of the Top Story team. a group of young journalists who've worked their way up and are really, really good and seasoned. And along with Nightly News, like two of the best teams I think that I've ever worked with. And so it's just a pleasure. It's a pleasure to work with them. And I don't know, it's a great job. And it's like, if you ask anybody who plays professional sport, I'm sure if they said, would you still do it if you had to play an extra quarter, if you had to play an extra 2 quarters? I'm sure they would tell you, of course I would, because it's like, I love doing this. And yeah, am I exhausted at the end of the day? Oh yeah, I'm exhausted at the end of the day, but it's great. And I can leave everything on the field. And if I ever feel like I got anything left in the tank after Nightly, I know I got a whole hour show ready to go. So I better have stuff in the tank.
I know every day is different. It's a news business, so every day brings something new. But what is just in general, what's a day in the life like? A work day in the life of Tom Llamas? It's
a lot. I tell people now my life is programmed pretty much from the moment I get up. I'm in here. I'm at work by noon, but I'm on calls starting at 9:30. I'm taking calls on the commute in, which is about 40 minutes. I'm reading all morning, watching things all morning, grabbing my workout in and helping my wife get the kids off to school. And then when I'm here starting at noon, I'm just dialed in and I'm preparing for segments. I'm talking to the EP of both shows. Matt Frucci is the executive producer of Top Story and of Nightly News. Since I was anchoring both shows, I kind of wanted to have an EP that looked over both shows too, because they're both equally important to me. And so I wanted to make sure we had somebody overseeing both shows that it was equally important to them as well. And then I'm talking to the senior broadcast producers and the senior producers about their shows. Sometimes I'm WhatsApping or texting with the correspondents that are out in the field, and I'm prepping. Like today, you've caught me, Tom, at a day that's like really busy. And I think this is going to air a little bit later, but we're watching 2 major stories: the storm and what's happened in Minneapolis. I have a huge interview with one of the big AI founders tonight for Top Story and Nightly News. I'm preparing for a major interview that's going to happen. We hope next week. There's a possible foreign trip that is out there that may or may not happen, where it's a little dicey, so we're just kind of going back and forth about it, whether we can make it happen or not. We've got the Olympics in a week and a half. We have the Super Bowl next weekend. So these are all stuff that we're going to be live at, that I have to be up to speed on to make sure I'm dialed in on. So all of that, and I'm doing this Poynter Zoom
I appreciate
podcast. So it's like it's a lot. It's busy, but it's great. It's like it's what I dreamed of.
Do you? I know you have a family, you have kids. But is there downtime? Like, are you able to get away from it?
Yeah, there is. I mean, the weekends are important, but what I've realized with this job, they built a studio in my house when I got this new job, and so they can get to me whenever they want. But it is hard. It's hard because, especially in this news cycle, President Trump, I always describe him sort of as when it comes to the news making power, he's like a hurricane, right? Hurricanes make a lot of news, and President Trump makes a lot of news, and he doesn't stop. And so every weekend there's something, every day there's something, every morning there's something, there's calls in the middle of the night. A year ago, it was New Orleans on New Year's Day. The next year, it was Venezuela, a couple of days after that. So it's like, you got to be ready at all times. You really got to be ready at all times. I'm trying, one of my New Year's resolutions was I heard Ari Emanuel say this, and I thought it was great. He says, when you're on the field, you're on the field, but when you're off, you're off. And that's good. It's like, so when I'm home, when I walk through that front door, I'm sort of disconnected. I can always be reached by phone, but when I'm home and I'm with my kids, the phone's down, I'm with them, we're figuring out fun things to do. I'm coaching, or I'm hanging out with them, or I'm doing something with my daughters. But I'm plugged in, and they know that they have me when I'm home, and I'm not, married to my computer or to my phone, unless news breaks.
Right.
But it's hard. I mean, Tom, I'm not gonna lie. It's definitely very difficult.
I can't imagine. I mean, like I said, I can only imagine with all the hours that you put in. I did want to ask you before you go about your parents. I see them on. They've shown up on TV. I've seen them on the Today Show. Born in Cuba, so it's sort of the American dream story in a lot of ways. I know you talked a lot about their journey and your journey. What's this been like, sort of watching what you're doing through them? Is that, if you understand?
Yeah, I mean, look, my love of news started with them. I always say that my parents, I can remember as far back as I can remember, reading the Miami Herald cover to cover. They would always watch news in English and Spanish. They would dissect interviews. Like, I mean, I remember hearing about bias as a young kid, because if Castro ever did an interview, the sort of the rare times he would do a sit down with usually a network news journalist, we would watch the interview as a family, and then I would hear, my parents' take and my uncle's take and my grandmother's take about what they thought of the interview and, who was lying and why they asked him this and why he didn't say this. Anyways, so I've been hearing about that as a young child, and I've always loved current events. I think it's being the son of immigrants. I care about the world. I think you have to be an informed citizen. I grew up in a place like Miami that was an exciting news town. I mean, always something happened locally, whether it be local politics or hurricanes or immigration events. I mean, I grew up with this every single day. So they know the news. They love the news. They watch a lot of news. They're kind of that key demo now. So they watch a lot of news and they read a lot of news. So they're up to speed. And at times we can't talk about certain events because like I said, I want to disconnect. I want to come off the field. And they love it. They want to talk about it. But they understand like we've put up sort of like, barriers now where it's like, let's just talk about us or the family or kids and not talk about the news. And if sometimes, if I want to, I'll engage with them because they love to talk about it. But it's been, they're incredibly proud. I mean, I wouldn't be here without them. They supported me and they helped me get my education and helped me during those internships. So I owe it all to them. And yeah, they're here all the time and they're watching both shows and they're my own little like sort of Nielsen focus group, and so it's always good to talk to them and hear what they think about the news.
One last thing, Tom. I asked this to a lot of media leaders who come on. We talked about Trump a minute ago. He's like a hurricane; it never stops. He's such a dominant part of not only the news cycle but our lives. In the meantime, is there a subject or a topic out there that you would like to cover more? Something that maybe we in the media aren't covering just because we don't have the bandwidth sometimes because of all this stuff with Trump or all the stuff that's going on in Venezuela or in Gaza or in Ukraine or whatever. You mentioned AI a moment ago. You have your investigative series you talked about. Is there a topic that, boy, I'd really like to see?
You're talking hard news?
Yeah.
Hard news?
Yeah.
I mean, I think with Top Story, we started the series called The Americas, where we cover what's happening in Latin America. I think to understand immigration, you really got to understand what's happening south of our borders, right? Whether it be in places like Cuba or Venezuela, or even like places like Peru and Argentina and Mexico, of course, and Central America. So we try to cover that a lot. I think, I'm always interested in sort of the immigrant experience and people who kind of come to this country and their different stories and the different generations and how one generation sees the country and how the next generation either sort of evolves or keeps those same views. I'm always sort of fascinated by that. I love stories about people who, obviously come here with nothing and make it very big. We do this segment at the end of Nightly called There's Good News Tonight. And, I think anytime we can tell stories like that just make people feel great, I think that's important. Look, I think AI is you read about AI and there's a lot of warnings coming out. I'm going to interview this one of these AI founders right now, this founding one of the biggest companies. And the reason why we're doing this interview is because he's putting out an essay, and the essay is pretty alarming. The things that, and he's somebody who this is his business, and he's sort of putting this essay out to sort of warn people of what's at stake here. And I think there's this race between these 3 or 4 companies that are racing to be the king of AI, and there's a lot of dangers and pitfalls involved. And there's really no guardrails at this point, right? They can do whatever they want. And so if we're not careful, we don't have an eye on it, because that's our job, right? I mean, it's like, if there's no watchdogs, then who's minding the store? So I think AI is big. And but I feel like with Top Story, I gotta be honest with you, Tom, we're able to cover so much because we have that hour of news.
Yeah.
Like we're I don't want to say we're always like hungry for more stories, but I mean, every day, like we're trying to fill a rundown. Like, how it is. Like we're trying to get the news on and fill a paper, with content. So I still think there's a lot of stories out there, but I think we do a pretty good job of telling all those stories.
Well, he's Tom Llamas, incredibly busy. I appreciate you taking a moment. You can watch him every weeknight on the NBC Nightly News, as well as Top Story on NBC Now. Tom, thanks so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks for listening. A reminder, we have 4 seasons of the Poynter Report podcast available for you anytime. Watch seasons 3 and 4 on YouTube and listen to any season on Apple, Google, Spotify. We have new episodes coming out every 2 weeks. Till then, I'm Tom Jones. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for listening. The views and opinions of this episode's guest and the host are not associated with nor reflect those of the University of South Florida. The podcast is produced by the Department of Journalism and Digital Communication at the University of South Florida, St. Petersburg. Executive producers are Elliot Weiser and Ren LaForme. Our producers are Tom Jones and Carolina Raboni. Production assistant is Ariel Makis. And our director is Christopher Campbell. And a special thank you to Neil Brown and Dr. Mark Walters.